Think about the most confident person you know. Not the loudest, not the most performative, not the one who talks the most or takes up the most space. I mean the person who, when something hard is in front of them, simply moves toward it, who fails and comes back, who tries things they have never done before without needing a guarantee that it will work out first. Now think about this. Were they born that way? Because that is what most of us believe, somewhere underneath the things we say about confidence in public. We believe that some people simply have it, that it arrived with them, built into their character, a fixed trait distributed unevenly at birth, that the people who have it are the people who always had it, and the people who don't are the people who never will. I want to tell you why that is wrong, not as motivation, not as a pep talk, as neuroscience. In 1977, a Canadian-American psychologist at Stanford University named Albert Bandura published a paper that would become one of the most cited pieces of research in the history of psychology. The paper was called Self-Efficacy, toward a unifying theory of behavioral change. And what Bandura described in that paper, and in the decades of research that followed it, changed fundamentally how psychology understands the nature of confidence, where it comes from, and how it is built. His core finding was this: confidence is not a trait. It is a belief, a specific, learnable, buildable belief about your own capability in a particular domain, for a particular task, in a particular situation. A belief that can be measured, that can be developed through specific mechanisms, and that the research shows predicts human achievement and resilience more powerfully than almost any other psychological variable. Bandura called it self-efficacy, and today I am going to take you inside the science of it, what it actually is, how it forms in the brain, why the way most people try to build confidence does not work, and what the research shows actually does. By the end of this video, you will never think about confidence the same way again. Before we get to the science, we need to get clear on what we are actually talking about, because confidence is one of the most misunderstood words in psychology, and the misunderstanding itself is part of why so many people struggle to build it. When most people say they want more confidence, what they mean is they want to feel certain. They want to walk into a difficult situation, knowing it will go well. They want to stop second-guessing. They want the inner noise to quiet. They want to feel, before they act, that success is guaranteed. That is not confidence. That is certainty. And certainty in most domains that matter is simply not available. Albert Bandura made a distinction that is fundamental to everything in this video. He described self-efficacy as distinct from the colloquial term confidence. Confidence, he noted, is a non-specific term. It refers to the strength of a belief without specifying what the certainty is about. Self-efficacy, by contrast, is specific. It is your belief in your capability to organize and execute the courses of action required to produce specific outcomes. The specificity is everything. Self-efficacy is not a general feeling of being capable. It is a task-specific, domain-specific belief about what you can do in a particular situation. This is why someone can have extremely high self-efficacy as a surgeon and extremely low self-efficacy as a public speaker. Why a person can walk into a complex negotiation completely unfazed and be paralyzed by the idea of asking someone out. Why confidence in one area does not automatically transfer to another. It is also why the self-esteem movement, the decades of telling children they were special, praising effort regardless of outcome, building general positive feelings about the self. produced mixed results at best. Self-esteem and self-efficacy are related, but they are not the same thing. Self-esteem is your overall evaluation of your worth as a person. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to do specific things. And the research is unambiguous about which one predicts performance, resilience, and achievement more reliably. It is self-efficacy. Studies consistently show that self-efficacy predicts academic achievement better than IQ, that it predicts athletic performance better than natural ability, that it predicts recovery from illness, success in professional transitions, resilience in the face of setbacks, across every domain of human functioning where it has been measured. Here is the most important implication of all of this. Self-efficacy is not fixed. It is not a trait you either have or you do not. It is a belief system, and belief systems can be changed. They are built through specific experiences, through specific mechanisms, through specific processes that Bandura identified and that the research has confirmed and refined over nearly 50 years. Those mechanisms are what we are going to examine next. To understand why self-efficacy works the way it does, why certain experiences build it and others destroy it, why the brain responds to confidence the way it does, we need to spend some time inside the neuroscience. Confidence is not housed in a single brain region. Dr. Stacy Grossman-Bloom, a neuroscientist at New York University who has spent her career studying the brain mechanisms of self-belief, describes confidence as the result of a network of regions working together. But there are three key players whose interaction determines the experience of confidence in any given situation. The first is the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, sitting just behind your forehead. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for decision-making, goal-setting, planning, and the evaluation of risk and reward. Neuroimaging studies consistently show that individuals with higher self-efficacy demonstrate greater activation in the prefrontal cortex when facing challenging situations. This is not a metaphor. The brain of someone who believes they can do something and the brain of someone who believes they cannot are functioning differently in a measurable, visible way. The second player is the amygdala, the brain's threat alarm. In previous videos, we have talked about the amygdala in the context of anxiety and cognitive distortions. It plays an equally central role in confidence. When confidence is low, when self-efficacy is absent, the amygdala fires more readily in response to challenge, triggering the physiological cascade of threat response, impairing the prefrontal cortex's ability to function, producing the hesitation and self-doubt and second-guessing that feel like a character flaw but are actually a system disruption. A well-functioning confidence system requires the prefrontal cortex to be able to regulate the amygdala, to override the threat alarm when the situation does not actually require it. And that regulation is strengthened by exactly what Bandura's research identifies as the primary source of self-efficacy, which we will come to in a moment. The third player is dopamine, the brain's primary motivational and reward neurotransmitter. Dopamine is released not only in response to rewards, but in anticipation of them. When you anticipate success, when your self-efficacy is high and your brain believes that your actions will produce the results you want, dopamine is released, increasing motivation, improving focus, and crucially, strengthening the neural pathways associated with the confident behavior. It says, in the language of neurons, this path works, do it again. This is where the neuroscience and Bandura's psychology intersect most powerfully. Every mastery experience, every time you do something hard, complete something challenging, succeed at something you were not sure you could do, produces a dopamine response that encodes the experience as evidence of capability. The hippocampus stores it. The next time you face a similar challenge, the brain can reactivate that memory and use it to inform the self-efficacy judgment, the belief about whether you can do this. Confidence at the neural level is accumulated evidence, not a feeling, not a trait, not something you either have or you do not. It is what the brain builds when it has enough data to believe that the actions available to it are likely to produce the outcomes it wants. And the extraordinary implication of this, the implication that changes everything about how you build confidence, is that the data can be deliberately collected. Albert Bandura identified 4 specific mechanisms through which self-efficacy is built and maintained. He called them the 4 sources of self-efficacy. And they are not equal. They have a specific hierarchy, a specific order of power, and understanding that hierarchy is the difference between building confidence that lasts and chasing a feeling that dissolves. Source 1. Mastery experiences. This is the most powerful source of self-efficacy by a significant margin. Not encouragement, not positive thinking, not visualization, not affirmations, actual, direct personal experience of succeeding at something that required effort. Bandura described mastery experiences as the most influential source of self-efficacy information because they provide the most authentic evidence of whether one can muster whatever it takes to succeed. When you succeed, genuinely succeed, at something that was genuinely difficult, you are providing your brain with direct, first-hand, undeniable data about your capability. And here is the critical nuance that makes this both more important and more accessible than it first appears. The experiences do not have to be large. In fact, the research suggests that a series of small, meaningful, progressively challenging mastery experiences is more effective at building durable self-efficacy than a small number of large achievements. Each small win adds a data point. Each data point strengthens the neural pathway. Each strengthened pathway makes the next attempt more likely and the next success more accessible. Psychologists Albert Bandura and Dale Shunk conducted research in the 1980s, demonstrating that students who set and achieved proximal, short-term goals, small, specific, immediately achievable targets, showed significantly greater improvements in self-efficacy than students working only toward distant, long-term goals. The wins were smaller, but they were more frequent, more concrete, and more immediately usable by the brain as evidence. This is also why failure, handled correctly, is not the enemy of self-efficacy. Bandura was explicit about this. He did not argue that confidence comes from never failing. He argued that it comes from having enough mastery experiences to maintain the belief in your capability even when specific attempts fail. The brain does not need a perfect record. It needs a rich enough evidential base to sustain the belief. Source 2. Vicarious experience. The second source of self-efficacy is observing other people succeed. Watching someone who you perceive as similar to yourself, in relevant ways, accomplish something you want to accomplish. This works through the brain's mirror neuron system and through the specific psychological mechanism that Bandura described. If they can do it, I can do it too. The key word is similar. The research shows that vicarious experience is most effective as a source of self-efficacy when the model you are observing is perceived as comparable to yourself in relevant ways. Watching a world-class athlete do something extraordinary tells you something about what is possible for humans, but does not necessarily inform your belief about what is possible for you specifically. Watching someone who started where you are, who has the same constraints and starting point and context succeed, that is a different and far more potent message. This is why mentorship is psychologically powerful beyond the practical information it provides. Why communities of practice, groups of people working towards similar goals, produce outcomes that working alone does not. Why seeing someone like you in a position you want to occupy changes what your brain believes is available to you. Source 3. Social persuasion. The third source is verbal encouragement, being told by others that you have what it takes, that you are capable, that you can do this. This is the source most people think of first when they think about building confidence. Encouragement, praise, positive feedback. And while it is a real source of self-efficacy, it does affect the belief. Bandura was clear that it is the weakest of the four, and that its effects are limited in a specific and important way. Social persuasion can boost self-efficacy temporarily. It can help people persist in the short term, but it cannot create the deep, durable self-efficacy that mastery experiences create, because it is external. It depends on someone else being there to provide it. And critically, encouragement without performance accomplishment cannot be sustained. If the encouraged person then tries the thing and fails repeatedly, the verbal persuasion loses its credibility and the self-efficacy collapses. There is a specific and important implication here about the kind of encouragement that is actually useful. Erik Erikson, whose work Bandura explicitly referenced, observed that children cannot be fooled by empty praise and condescending encouragement. They may have to accept it in the absence of something better, but genuine self-efficacy only grows from the wholehearted and consistent recognition of real accomplishment. Encouragement that is not connected to actual performance provides no durable data. The brain knows the difference between someone telling it is capable and the direct experience of demonstrating capability to itself. Source 4. Physiological and emotional states. The fourth source of self-efficacy is the interpretation of your own physiological and emotional states in performance situations. This is the source Bandura identified that most directly addresses the relationship between anxiety and confidence, and it is one of the most practically useful findings in the entire research base. When you are about to do something that matters, a presentation, a difficult conversation, a performance of any kind, your body produces physiological signals. Heart rate increases, palms may sweat, adrenaline flows, the nervous system activates. Bandura noted something important here. It is not necessarily the intensity of those signals that matters most. It is how you interpret them. If your self-efficacy is low, if your prior evidential base for capability is thin, you will interpret those physiological signals as proof of your inadequacy, as evidence that you are not ready, as confirmation of your worst fears about yourself. If your self-efficacy is high, you are more likely to interpret the identical signals as natural activation energy, as the body preparing itself for performance. Not threat, but readiness. The physical sensation is the same. The interpretation, entirely shaped by the self-efficacy belief, is different, and that interpretation then affects the performance, which generates more data for the self-efficacy belief. This feedback loop, physiological state, interpretation, performance, data, belief, physiological state, runs continuously in both directions. It can be a virtuous cycle or a vicious one, and which direction it runs depends on what the existing evidential base looks like. I want to stop here and talk about why the conventional approaches to building confidence so often fail. Because most people are working very hard on the wrong things, and understanding why those things do not work is as important as understanding what does. The first approach that does not work is waiting to feel confident before acting. This is the most common confidence trap, the belief that confidence is a precondition for action rather than a product of it, that you need to feel ready before you begin, feel sure before you speak, feel capable before you try. This gets the causal arrow exactly backwards. Confidence, in Bandura's framework, is produced by action, specifically by successful action. You cannot have the mastery experience without attempting the thing. You cannot build the evidential base without gathering the evidence. Waiting to feel confident before acting is waiting for an outcome that can only be produced by the action you are waiting to feel confident enough to take. The research on high self-efficacy individuals consistently shows that they do not act because they feel certain. They act despite uncertainty, and it is the acting despite uncertainty and the outcomes that follow that build the confidence the low self-efficacy person is waiting to feel before they start. The second approach that does not work is affirmations and positive self-talk without performance. Affirmations can function as a form of social persuasion applied to the self, and as we have seen, social persuasion without performance accomplishment is the weakest source of self-efficacy. Telling yourself you are capable feels good. It may produce a temporary boost in confidence, but if it is not connected to genuine mastery experience, the boost dissolves, often quickly, when the actual challenge arrives and the brain's evidential base fails to support the claim. There is also a specific problem with affirmations for people with genuinely low self-efficacy. Research by psychologist Joanne Wood found that for people with low self-esteem, which correlates strongly with low self-efficacy, positive self-statements can actually backfire, increasing negative mood rather than improving it. The brain, encountering a claim that contradicts its existing model, pushes back. The third approach that does not work is waiting for the perfect preparation. This is a specific form of the first trap that deserves its own mention because it is so common among high-performing, high-achieving people. The belief that confidence will arrive when they are prepared enough, when they have done enough research, when they have enough experience, when they feel ready. Readiness, in the self-efficacy framework, is not a feeling that precedes action. It is a belief that develops through action. You do not become ready and then act. You act, you learn what is required, you develop capability through iteration, and the belief in your capability develops alongside the capability itself. I want to pause here and speak to you directly, because I think some of what I have described resonates in a personal way. Maybe it is the waiting, the sense that you will do the thing, apply for the role, have the conversation, start the project, put the work out, when you are more ready, when you know more, when you are more certain. The waiting that has been going on for longer than you would like to admit, and that the honest part of you knows is not really about preparation at all. Maybe it is the way confidence feels like something that belongs to other people, the people who speak up in meetings without rehearsing first, who try new things without needing a guarantee, who seem to move through the world with a kind of basic assumption that they will be okay, that things will work out, that they are fundamentally capable, an assumption that has never felt fully available to you. I want to tell you something about those people. They were not born with it. The research is unambiguous on this point. Neuroscientist Professor Ian Robertson, founding director of the Trinity College Institute of Neuroscience in Dublin, has spent his career studying the brain mechanisms of confidence. His core conclusion, drawn from decades of research, is that confidence is absolutely not something some of us are simply born with. What they have is a richer evidential base, more mastery experiences, more accumulated data about their own capability, often built through no particular intention or design, through circumstances that provided opportunities, through early environments that were conducive to trying things, through the specific luck of having had early experiences of succeeding at things that mattered. But luck is not the only mechanism. The four sources of self-efficacy can be deliberately engaged. The evidential base can be intentionally built. The belief can be developed through specific actions taken in a specific sequence. That is what the next section is about. Here are 5 strategies that the research on self-efficacy consistently identifies as effective for building genuine, durable confidence. Not a temporary feeling, not a performance for other people. The deep, evidential belief in your own capability that Bandura spent his career describing. Strategy 1. Engineer small mastery experiences. This is the single most powerful thing you can do to build self-efficacy. And the research is specific about how to do it effectively. Do not start with the hardest version of the thing. Start with a version that is genuinely achievable, but genuinely requires effort. Not so easy that success provides no information. Not so difficult that failure is the most likely outcome. Calibrate the challenge so that success is probable, with genuine effort applied. Each success adds a data point. Each data point strengthens the neural pathway associated with capability in this domain. The goal is to build the evidential base deliberately, to collect the data that the brain needs to sustain the belief. Then, progressively, increase the difficulty. Bandura's research on proximal goal setting showed that the most effective confidence-building programs involve a sequence of increasingly challenging goals, each one achievable from the position the previous success created. Not a leap, a step, and then another step from where that step landed you. Strategy 2. Choose your models deliberately. Use the principle of vicarious experience intentionally. Identify people who are where you want to be and who are genuinely comparable to you in the relevant ways. Not the most exceptional performer in your field, someone who started where you are and moved forward from there. Study how they did it, not to copy it exactly, but to allow your brain to update its model of what is possible for someone with your starting conditions. The specific psychological mechanism that makes this work is similarity. The recognition that the person succeeding is someone whose situation the brain can genuinely map onto its own. Strategy 3. Reinterpret your physiological responses. This is the practical application of Bandura's fourth source, physiological states. When you feel the activation before a performance, the racing heart, the adrenaline, the heightened alertness, practice reframing it deliberately, not suppressing it, not denying it, reframing it. The research on stress appraisal theory by psychologist Jeremy Jameson at the University of Rochester found that people who were taught to reframe their stress response as performance-enhancing rather than debilitating showed measurable improvements in outcomes, in cognitive tests, in social performance situations, in actual examinations. The physiological response was identical. The interpretation was different, and the different interpretation changed the outcome. The reframe is not a lie. Your body is activating because something important is happening, and it is preparing you to meet it. That is accurate. The adrenaline is not evidence that you are going to fail. It is evidence that your brain takes this seriously and is allocating resources to it. Strategy 4. Actively seek out specific feedback, not general encouragement. Specific, honest, performance-related feedback from people who know what good looks like in the domain you are working in. General praise, "You are great," "You are so capable," "I believe in you," provides weak and unstable self-efficacy because it is disconnected from specific performance data. Specific feedback. Here is what you did well and why it worked. Here is specifically what would make it stronger. Provides your brain with the calibrated information it needs to build accurate self-efficacy. There is also a specific practice here that the research supports for building self-efficacy through feedback. Keep a record. Write down specific instances of doing something well. Specific, concrete, dated instances. The brain has a strong negativity bias. It will attend to failures more readily than successes. A deliberate record of mastery experiences counteracts this bias, keeping the evidential base visible and accessible rather than allowing it to fade beneath the weight of the failures that naturally attract more attention. Strategy 5. Act before you are ready. This is the strategic inversion of the most common confidence trap. Stop waiting for the feeling and start collecting the evidence. Begin with the smallest possible version of the thing you are waiting to be ready for. A first draft rather than a finished piece. A practice conversation rather than the real one. A small public attempt rather than the high-stakes one. The first step of the project rather than the whole project. The goal is not to get it right. The goal is to generate the mastery experience, however imperfect, that becomes the first data point in the evidential base. That first data point makes the second attempt more likely. The second attempt generates more data. The data builds the belief. The belief changes the interpretation of the physiological response. The changed interpretation improves the performance. The improved performance generates richer data. The cycle runs, but it can only start with the first action. Before we close, I want to say something about failure that the research demands be said. Building self-efficacy through mastery experiences does not mean never failing. It means building a rich enough evidential base that failure in any particular attempt does not collapse the entire belief. Bandura was explicit that occasional failure, experienced after a solid foundation of mastery experience has been built, is not damaging to self-efficacy. In fact, he argued that facing difficulties and overcoming them through sustained effort is one of the most powerful experiences for developing a resilient, durable sense of self-efficacy, because it proves something that success alone cannot, that you can cope with setback and come back. What is damaging is failure before the evidential base exists. This is why the sequence matters. Why starting with small, achievable mastery experiences is not timidity, but strategy. You are building the foundation before you test it. And the way you relate to failure, when it comes, matters enormously. Research by Kristin Neff and others consistently shows that self-compassion, treating yourself with the same care and understanding you would offer a close friend who had failed at something, is not just emotionally beneficial, but cognitively functional. It keeps the prefrontal cortex online, keeps the threat system from hijacking the learning process, and allows the failure to become data rather than verdict. Failures are data points. They tell you what to adjust, what to practice, what capability to develop. They are not evidence about your fundamental worth. They are information about a specific attempt at a specific task on a specific day. That distinction between failure as data and failure as verdict is one of the most important things the research on self-efficacy asks you to carry with you. Confidence is not a trait distributed at birth to the lucky few. It is a belief, a specific, measurable, buildable belief about your capability in particular domains for particular tasks, built through the accumulation of direct experience, through the observation of comparable others, through the careful interpretation of physiological signals, and through the specific quality of your environment's feedback. Albert Bandura spent nearly 50 years documenting this. The neuroscience has confirmed it. And the practical implication is both simple and profound. You do not need to feel confident to act. You need to act to build the evidence that confidence requires. The person who seems effortlessly confident is not someone different from you in kind. They are someone who has, by accident or by intention, built a richer evidential base, collected more data, taken more small steps that accumulated into a belief the brain is willing to sustain. You can build that base deliberately, starting with the smallest useful version of the thing, starting today, starting with the step that is available right now, from exactly where you are. If this video gave you something, a framework for something you have been experiencing, a tool you did not have before, a reframe that changes something, please subscribe and hit the bell. Every week on Soul Fuel, I bring you psychology and neuroscience like this. Real, research-backed, and designed to change how you understand yourself and the world around you. And I want to hear from you. Where in your life has low self-efficacy been keeping you waiting? What is the thing you have been preparing for longer than it requires? What is the first small step that would start the cycle running? Tell me in the comments, because naming it is how you begin to move. Feed your mind, free your soul,